Imagine you're sitting in a restaurant with your family. Suddenly a truck comes crashing through the window. You think it's just an accident. But then the driver gets out of the car and starts shooting people. This isn't a made-up story. This is what happened on October 16th, 1991 at a Luby's restaurant in Killeen, Texas. How do you think you would react if this happened to you? Do you have any idea what you should do? Most of us in this room would initially be in shock and a state of panic. The survival instinct would undoubtedly kick in and we would fall into the fight or flight syndrome. My name is Michael Ahart. I've been in law enforcement for over 20 years, and in that time, I have been trained in and have also trained other officers in the response to an active shooter. The civilians should also know how to respond to an active shooter, and that's what we'll be discussing here today. First of all, let's define what an active shooter is. The U.S. government agencies define an active shooter as an individual actively engaged in the killing or attempting of killing people in a confined and populated area. There is no pattern or method to the selection of their victims. Because in some cases weapons other than firearms are used, such as knives, they can also be termed as active killer, violent intruder, or active assailant. Now, I've already spoken of the Luby's incident in the beginning of this speech, but as we all know, there have been many other incidents that have taken place. For example, on August 1st, 1966, Charles Whitman, a former Marine and a student at the University of Texas, killed his wife and his mother at their home. He then went to the campus of the University of Texas in Austin with an arsenal of guns. For 90 minutes, he fired on students and faculty, killing 14 and wounding 32. He was eventually shot and killed by police. On April 20th, 1999, two teens on a shooting spree at Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, killed 13 people and wounded more than 20 before they turned their weapons on themselves and committed suicide. This crime was the worst high school shooting in U.S. history and prompted a national debate on gun control and school safety, as well as a major investigation to determine what motivated the gunmen, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. There was speculation that the two committed the killings because they had been bullied. They were members of a group of social outcasts that were fascinated by golf culture or had been influenced by violent video games and music. However, none of these theories were ever proven. And on April 16, 2007, Sung Hoo Cho, a student at Virginia Tech University, killed 32 students and teachers before turning his gun on himself as well. This was the worst mass shooting in U.S. history at the time. Now, moving forward, let's discuss some things that you can do to raise your chances of survival if you ever find yourself in a situation like the ones we discussed. Number one, know your surroundings. Make sure you know where the exits are located in a building when you go into it, whether it be a school, your office, you go into a restaurant, anything like that. You want to look around, know what your surroundings are. If something happens, what's my best avenue of escape? Having an escape plan can make all the difference in the world. Now, first of all, what should you do if you find yourself in an active shooter situation? Well, the first thing is escape. Escape the situation is the first step to survival. If you have the chance to run, then run. Get to an exit, break out a window, do whatever it takes to flee from the shooter. Many survivors of mass shootings have lived because they ran and got themselves out of the situation. An example of this comes from the Luby's shooting. A patron threw himself through a window, allowing him to escape along with many others that were near him at the time. Now, he did suffer some injuries from the glass cutting him, but he survived the shooting. The second thing you would want to do is to bunker down. If you can't run, then you may have to bunker down where you're at or find a place to bunker down. Once you get in there, you want to lock the door you want to barricade the door with whatever you can. If you see behind me here, I have a chair that I have wedged underneath the doorknob. That's one way you can bunker and that you can secure your door. There's a couch here. If I had to, I could push that couch up against the door. Now, this may not keep the shooter out entirely. He may still make that effort to get in, but it's that effort that might save you. Because if he comes to that room and he's trying to get that door open and there's something blocking that door, well, he might just give up on that and move on to easier targets. So that alone could save you just by locking and blocking the door. Now, one thing you want to do also during this time, once you've gone into this room, you've blocked the door, you've locked it, you want to shut the lights off. You want that room to be dark. You don't want them to be able to look in and be able to see into the room that well. So you want the room to be dark. You also want to take up a position that's on the same side, the wall on the same side of the room. What that does for you, if this door had a window in it, like many doors do in schools and in businesses and things like that, there's a window in that door. Well, you don't want him to be able to come up, look into the window, and see you in the room. It'll be almost impossible for him to look through that window and see you if you're over here in the corner of the room, same side as the door, off to the corner. He's not going to be able to see you in that room. So now you have something else that may cause him to move on. One, the door is locked. The door is blocked. The lights are out. The room is dark. He can't see in. And he can't see you anyway because you've hidden over in this corner. Now, while you're there, another thing you might want to do and think about, it's very important, is to arm yourself. Find something in that room that you can use as a weapon if it arises that you need to defend yourself. And that takes me to the next point, which is the third and final step of your last resort is to fight back. If you have to fight back. If the shooting starts and you find yourself in a place where you can't run, you have to fight back. If you get to a barricaded room and your barricade gets compromised and now he's in that room, you have to fight back. If you don't fight back, you will be shot and you may possibly die. It's a last resort, but it's something that you may have to do. Now, speaking of weapons, what kind of weapons can I find in my office or in a school that I can use as a weapon against a gunman? Well, there are things that you can use. They're not ideal. They're not going to be the first thing that anyone would think of as a weapon because they're everyday items. We're talking about a pen, an ink pen, a pencil, a pair of scissors. No, these are not the items that you would want to choose, but if it's all you have and you have to defend yourself, you take what you have. How would you use these things? Well, you want to go for vital areas. You want to go for the eyes, maybe around the neck, in the ears, whatever you can do to incapacitate that person, to slow him down, to hopefully stop him from not only killing you, but killing others. A lot of people carry knives to work every day or on their everyday life. They carry knives with them. A knife is a very intimidating weapon, even against someone with a gun. If you get close enough to them with this knife that you can injure them with it, stab them, slash them, cut them, it's a very intimidating weapon. That in of itself, them seeing this, might cause them to turn and run. You never know. They'll start thinking of self-preservation maybe at that point. Also, maybe you grab a vase off the shelf. If you have to, this is what you use. Hit them with it. If it breaks, good. You got sharp edges now. If it breaks, you can slash and stab with. Anything you can find in this situation to defend yourself is what you're going to need to grab and use. They're not ideal, but you've got to do what you got to do to survive. And again, fighting is the last resort. You don't want to fight unless you have nothing else to do. You can't run. You can't hide anymore. All right, now moving on to reacting to when the police arrive. If you have armed yourself with anything, as soon as you know the police are there, you put that down. You don't want to have anything in your hands that appears to be a weapon or anything when the police arrive and they encounter you. Because the last thing you want to have happen is you survive the shooting and then you get injured by the police because you're standing there with a weapon when they encounter you and they don't know if you're a threat or not. And they do what they need to do to keep themselves safe. So drop your weapon as soon as the police arrive and you know they're there. Get rid of that weapon. Next thing is follow the officer's directions. There's going to be chaos during and after the situation has ended. If you're not following directions given by law enforcement, you'll only add to the chaos and cause more anxiety and fear. The other thing is answer their questions. They're going to be asking you questions. They're going to ask you things like, what does the shooter look like? Where was the last place you saw the shooter? And how many shooters did you see? These are just examples of some questions they're going to ask. Answer them to the best of your ability and honestly. It'll help to keep you safer. It'll help to keep the officers safer and everyone else. The fourth thing is there's rescue efforts by police. You have to understand that the police are trained to go after the shooter. So if you're injured and the police encounter you while you're injured and there's still shooting going on, they're going to leave you there. They're going to pass you by to go for that shooter. But rest assured, they will return for you. They're not going to leave you. They will be back. But their ultimate goal in that situation is to stop that shooter. So you just need to realize that they're not leaving you behind. They're coming back for you. Now, in conclusion, let's recap what we've gone over. We spent the last several minutes discussing the civilian response to an active shooter. And I hope that I've taught you all something today that may save your life if you ever encounter such a horrific event. So let's all remember the 3 main points of how to respond. Flee the situation. Run if you can run and get out of the situation. 2, bunker down. If you don't have the opportunity to flee and you can find a place to bunker down and hide, then you bunker down and you hide. And the third and the last resort that you want to have to do when facing a gunman is to fight back, but you may have to fight back. And that's your third and final result. Fight back if you must. Now, the only thing that matters from the beginning to the end of an active shooter situation that you may find yourself in is that you get out and you go home safely to your loved ones. Follow these 3 steps, and it will definitely raise your chances of survival in this situation. Thank you for your time today, and may all of you stay safe.